Welcome to the deep dive. It feels like COVID-19 isn't making headlines every single day anymore, but it's definitely still out there. It's changed things.
Absolutely. It's reshaped so much.
Yeah, and we've all kind of adapted, haven't we?
Hmm.
Maybe without even fully realizing how deep those shifts go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this deep dive is about. We want to cut through all the noise. We've gone through a whole bunch of material on living with COVID-19, a new normal.
Sorting through it all.
Exactly. Trying to pull out the really key takeaways, maybe some surprising bits, and figure out what it actually means for you listening right now.
And it's definitely still relevant. Just because it's not peak crisis doesn't mean we start paying attention.
Right.
Understanding how things have evolved is, well, it's crucial for public health, definitely, but also just for navigating things day to day
Yeah.
and, thinking about what might come next.
Okay, so let's jump right in. What are the sources telling us about where we actually stand with COVID right now?
Well, the big headline, I suppose, is the shift to an endemic stage in a lot of countries.
Endemic. Okay, what does that practically mean? The material sort of compares it to the flu or a cold.
Yeah, in terms of it becoming a more regular, predictable part of the landscape. But importantly, generally less severe than it was initially. That's the key difference from the pandemic phase.
Less severe overall, right.
Yeah,
But predictable. So it's here to stay, essentially.
that's what endemic implies, yes. It's something public health systems now plan for routinely, like seasonal flu, rather than reacting in crisis mode. It's managed differently.
Gotcha. And we're still seeing new variants pop up, right? The
Hmm.
sources mentioned things like XBB and KP.2.
Variants are expected with viruses like this. They continue to emerge.
But the material says these newer ones are mostly less lethal. Is that accurate?
Generally speaking, yes. The data suggests they tend to cause less severe disease compared to, say, the original strains or Delta.
And why is that? Is it the virus changing or us?
It's actually a combination of both, but a huge factor is population immunity.
Ah, right. From vaccination and also people having caught it before.
Exactly. Widespread vaccination and natural immunity from past infections mean our bodies are just, well, better prepared to handle these newer variants. It provides a buffer.
That makes sense. It explains why, even if lots of people get it, the overall impact isn't like those first waves.
Precisely. The context has changed because of that built-up immunity.
But the sources do still warn about risk for elderly and vulnerable people, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. That's critical. While the general population risk is lower, for older adults or those with certain health conditions, COVID can still be very serious. Protection for those groups remains really important.
Okay. And just looking around, daily life feels, well, different than a couple years ago. Restrictions seem gone.
Yeah, that's a massive shift noted in the material. Almost all countries have lifted the formal COVID restrictions.
Schools, offices, travel. It feels mostly back to normal, whatever that means now.
It does. It reflects this global adaptation, this collective effort to move forward. But, while the rules are gone, I think there's probably still a subtle underlying awareness for many people, maybe a bit more caution in some situations.
Yeah, maybe subconsciously. Okay, so beyond just where we are now, what about the longer term stuff? What lessons or lasting impacts did the sources highlight? This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Definitely. One of the starkest findings was how the pandemic exposed major weaknesses in healthcare systems.
Right. Unreliability, mismanagement. The sources use some strong language there.
They did. It wasn't just about being overwhelmed, though that happened. It was about systemic issues like supply chains breaking down, data not being shared effectively, difficulty scaling up testing or beds quickly, real foundational
So it
problems.
wasn't just a stress test. It revealed cracks that were already there.
Exactly. It showed where systems lacked resilience, flexibility, and that's a huge takeaway, a sort of urgent call to action to reinvest and rethink how we structure public health infrastructure globally.
Another major impact mentioned is mental health. Loneliness, anxiety, depression, rates went up.
Significantly, according to the sources, the isolation, the uncertainty, the grief, it all took a heavy toll.
And that doesn't just vanish when restrictions lift, does it?
Not at all. That's the long tail effect. Addressing these ongoing mental health challenges is a really significant piece of the pandemic's legacy. We need continued focus and resources there.
Okay, but it wasn't all negative impacts.
Yeah.
The sources pointed to some, maybe unexpected, positive shifts, too, like online education.
Yes. That's a fascinating one. Virtual learning just exploded.
It became normal almost overnight for schools, colleges, even professional courses.
Right. And while there were definitely challenges with it, it also opened up possibilities. The sources suggest this could really reshape education long term. Think about accessibility, flexibility.
Breaking down geographic barriers, maybe
Mm,
offering different ways to learn.
precisely. It has transformative potential if we, build on it thoughtfully.
And what about everyday habits? The sources mention personal hygiene.
Mm-hmm. Hand washing, maybe using masks sometimes when you're feeling unwell or in crowded spaces.
Things that became second nature during the peaks.
Exactly. And the interesting point is these habits don't just protect against COVID, they help reduce the spread of flu, common colds, other respiratory illnesses.
So like an unintended public health benefit.
Yeah, a lasting positive legacy, you could say. These simple actions contribute to overall community health. It's quite a practical, everyday game.
Okay, so pulling this all together, we have this endemic virus, generally less severe, but still risky for some. And we've learned some hard lessons, picked up some new habits. What does it all mean looking forward?
Well, it means COVID has fundamentally changed things. Our lives, maybe how we think about health, our connections. Even if the immediate threat feels lower, the world is different.
And that awareness and hygiene piece seems key to carry forward.
Absolutely crucial. The sources stress that. It's not about living in fear, but maintaining that baseline level of awareness and practicing those simple, effective hygiene measures. They really are powerful tools.
So, for the future, to avoid something like this again, or at least handle it better, what did the material say is essential? What do we absolutely need?
The sources laid out three really critical pillars. They're interconnected. You can't really have one without the others.
Okay, what are they?
First, strong, ongoing scientific research. Understanding viruses, developing diagnostics, vaccines, treatments, that needs constant investment.
Right, makes sense.
Second, real investment in healthcare infrastructure. Not just hospitals, but public health systems, surveillance, data sharing, workforce, making them resilient and adaptable.
Tackling those weaknesses we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And third, global cooperation. Pandemics don't respect borders. Sharing information, resources, coordinating responses. It's absolutely non-negotiable.
Research, healthcare investment, and global cooperation. Got it.
They're not just nice-to-haves. The material frames them as indispensable for future preparedness. It's the foundation.
So wrapping this deep dive up, COVID has definitely evolved. It's not the same crisis it was, but its legacy is huge. We're living in a changed world, armed with, hopefully, some new knowledge and better habits.
That's really the heart of it, understanding the shift, the lessons learned. It's not just looking back, it's about being better equipped mentally and practically for whatever comes next. It encourages or should encourage ongoing thinking about public health and, our own roles in it.
Yeah. So here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. Think about how those small things, like washing your hands a bit more often or staying home when you're sick, how those individual actions are now part of a much bigger picture of global health and preparedness. What does that really mean for how you approach your own health and maybe the health of your community too?